The village's Board of Trustees after multiple members did not attend tonight's meeting.
Tiffany Henyard, once a dominant force in Dalton's local leadership, finds her grip on power quickly deteriorating. What began as whispers and rumors about her governance has now transformed into a full-blown political and legal crisis. Henyard, who once proudly carried the title of the self-proclaimed Queen of Dalton, is now facing widespread criticism as her administration sinks further into scandal and controversy. The most recent blow to her authority was the leak of explosive footage, allegedly from her own team, which has sent shockwaves through her already fractured political career. Henyard's reign has seen a steady stream of poor decisions, and the most recent one was especially telling. After a Board of Trustees meeting was abruptly canceled due to low attendance, Henyard moved forward with important decisions without the oversight of the board. In what many considered a brazen move, she appointed a new village administrator and made several legal appointments, seemingly to solidify her own control over the town's administration. These decisions, made in the absence of the trustees, were seen by many as a desperate attempt to avoid criticism, while others saw them as defiant actions that undermined any remaining trust in her leadership. The Illinois Attorney General's office quickly condemned Henyard for violating the Open Meetings Act not once, but twice, first in June and again in July. The state launched an investigation into her administration, adding legal pressure to the mounting criticism from residents. As if the accusations of legal misconduct weren't enough, Henyard's approach to governance also raised further alarm. Her increasingly tight grip on power was reflected in her over-the-top security measures at Village Hall. Although Henyard claimed the heightened security was in response to a vague and poorly substantiated threat, many residents saw it as a thinly veiled excuse to control public access and shield herself from the growing backlash. Public meetings that should have been open to the citizens of Dalton became exclusive affairs, closed to all but a select few, leaving the majority of residents feeling excluded from the very governance that was supposed to represent them. Critics quickly pointed out that Henyard's actions seemed less about safety and more about maintaining control over her administration and isolating herself from scrutiny. Some even accused her of using the so-called threat as a tactic to suppress dissent and silence opposition. Public interest in meetings dwindled, with less than 20 people attending recent announcements that were supposed to be important. This drop in attendance signaled the growing disillusionment among Dalton's residents, who were increasingly fed up with Henyard's unstable leadership as her grip on power weakened. Henyard made yet another controversial decision by appointing a new village administrator and lawyer, both of whom appeared to be more concerned with preserving her authority than addressing the town's ongoing issues. Henyard's blatant disregard for the public's concerns was seen as a symptom of her broader leadership crisis. Once regarded as a leader capable of bringing change to Dalton, Henyard's actions have led to widespread disappointment and resentment among the community. Meanwhile, the embattled Henyard's inner circle is shrinking, and her relationship with Keith Freeman, a once loyal ally, is unraveling in spectacular fashion. Freeman, who had been Henyard's right-hand man for years, is now at the center of a legal storm. He faces multiple charges, including bankruptcy fraud, where he is accused of concealing assets and falsifying his income. As his legal troubles mounted, Henyard found herself distancing from him, claiming that Freeman's actions were a threat to her political future. Despite their long-standing collaboration, Freeman's increasingly isolated position within Henyard's administration only highlighted her own instability. The tension between the two came to a head when Henyard attempted to fire Freeman, allegedly fearing that his cooperation with federal investigators could expose her own alleged misconduct. Freeman's knowledge of Henyard's secrets made him a dangerous liability, and her decision to sever ties with him was viewed by many as an attempt to salvage her dwindling political career. Freeman, however, refused to go down quietly. He asserted that Henyard's attempts to fire him were unlawful due to a lack of quorum at the meeting where his dismissal was discussed. His defiance only added to the drama surrounding Henyard's administration, but Freeman's troubles were not the only source of Henyard's growing problems. His legal woes included accusations of retaliation against employees he fired for not supporting Henyard, further undermining the administration's credibility. As Henyard distanced herself from Freeman, she also found herself embroiled in a wave of lawsuits from former employees accusing her of wrongful termination. These legal challenges only added to the ongoing public relations nightmare that had come to define Henyard's leadership. Despite the mounting legal and political pressure, Henyard has shown no signs of retreating. Instead, she seems to have doubled down on her defiant approach to governance, making even more controversial decisions in an attempt to consolidate power. For example, her insistence on bolstering security at Village Hall after a laughable barely credible threat seemed like little more than a diversionary tactic designed to distract from her mounting legal troubles. These measures, combined with her questionable leadership style, have done little to inspire confidence in the community. Public sentiment has shifted dramatically as more and more residents begin to question Henyard's ability to lead. Once a popular figure, Henyard is now seen as a divisive and erratic leader whose actions seem more focused on self-preservation than the well-being of Dalton. Her failure to gain the support of the Board of Trustees or maintain loyalty from her closest allies only serves to deepen the perception that her administration is in a state of disarray. Henyard's desperate attempts to reorganize her team, including the controversial appointment of Freeman and others to key positions, have only fueled suspicions that she is trying to replace potential opponents with loyal supporters at the same time. The growing controversy surrounding Freeman's involvement in Henyard's administration has raised questions about the depth of her corruption. As federal investigators close in on Freeman, speculation has increased that Henyard is desperately trying to shield herself from the fallout. Freeman's potential cooperation with authorities has made him an even more pivotal figure in the unfolding drama, and many believe he may hold critical information that could expose Henyard's alleged misconduct. Despite her efforts to control the narrative, Henyard is losing ground on all fronts. The legal challenges, combined with the public's growing disenchantment with her leadership, have left her increasingly isolated. Her administration's internal conflicts, most notably the breakdown between Henyard and Freeman, have further eroded her credibility. Henyard's attempts to sideline Freeman, once one of her most trusted allies, have only drawn more attention to her administration's dysfunction. In addition to Freeman's legal problems, Henyard is facing increasing scrutiny over her handling of taxpayer funds. Allegations of corruption have surfaced, and many Dalton residents are questioning how their money is being spent under her leadership. With the financial and administrative troubles mounting, it's clear that Henyard's once promising tenure has spiraled into chaos. The fallout from Henyard's actions is spreading beyond Dalton. Her reputation has been tarnished by the legal battles, public outrage, and internal strife that have consumed her administration. As the community grows more vocal in its criticism, the pressure on Henyard to step down or face even more serious consequences continues to mount. The appointment of Freeman and other controversial figures to key positions has only deepened the perception that Henyard is clinging to power in a desperate attempt to avoid facing the consequences of her actions. At this point, it seems that Henyard's leadership is hanging by a thread. The lack of support from the Board of Trustees, the growing number of lawsuits, the public's diminishing faith in her ability to lead, and the legal pressure surrounding Freeman all point to a leadership on the brink of collapse. Despite her best efforts to maintain control, Henyard's authority appears to be crumbling, and it remains to be seen whether she can weather the storm or if Dalton will demand a change in leadership. Henyard's fate is now inextricably linked to the political and legal battles surrounding her administration. Her once loyal allies, including Freeman, are now enemies, and the public is increasingly looking for answers. As the scandals continue to mount, it's unclear how much longer Henyard can maintain her position. One thing is certain: her reign, once seen as unassailable, is now teetering on the brink of collapse. The story of Tiffany Henyard's leadership in Dalton is one of cautionary tales for any leader who becomes too entrenched in their own power. Her attempts to suppress dissent, manipulate the political system, and control the narrative have only alienated the very people she was meant to serve. As the legal and political challenges continue to mount, it seems that Henyard's time in office may be rapidly coming to an end, leaving Dalton to pick up the pieces of an administration defined by scandal, incompetence, and betrayal. Tiffany Henyard's efforts to maintain control over Dalton have become increasingly desperate as her administration faces mounting opposition and legal scrutiny. In a move widely condemned as an attempt to consolidate power amidst her declining influence, Henyard tried to replace key positions without the necessary approval from the Board of Trustees. Despite these unilateral decisions, Freeman, the village administrator, has managed to hold on to his position, largely backed by the board in his resistance to Henyard's actions. The deadlock between Henyard and Freeman has left Henyard in a weakened position, but her refusal to relinquish authority has only deepened the crisis. Henyard recently held a town meeting without the Board of Trustees, openly disregarding their role in governance. This move is consistent with her previous actions, where she has been accused of undermining checks and balances and acting with unchecked authority. The implications of Freeman's alleged cooperation with federal authorities are significant. If Freeman holds concrete evidence of Henyard's misconduct, his continued presence in the administration could seriously threaten her already fragile leadership. The growing perception of Henyard as a desperate leader clinging to power at all costs has fueled frustration among residents and legal observers, casting doubt on her ability to lead effectively throughout her tenure. Henyard has been accused of an authoritarian leadership style, retaliating against those who question her authority and disregarding established norms. Former employees who have taken legal action against her claim she used her position to punish dissenters, creating an environment that was anything but fair or equitable. These allegations add another layer of controversy to an administration already riddled with scandals. Evidence suggests a broader pattern of misconduct, extending beyond Freeman's potential awareness of Henyard's activities, further complicating her political troubles. Freeman's ongoing role in Henyard's administration continues to obstruct her attempts to exert full control, and his position has become increasingly significant in the unfolding drama. Allegations of his cooperation with federal investigators have intensified tensions, raising suspicions about Henyard's motives in trying to remove him from his post. As the power struggle between Freeman and Henyard continues, her grip on power grows more tenuous, with mounting legal and political pressures threatening to unravel her leadership. Freeman's persistence in rumored cooperation with federal authorities may be less about his job performance and more about shielding Henyard from exposure, as he potentially holds damaging information against her. Henyard's increasingly fragile position is underscored by her attempts to sideline the Board of Trustees and make decisions unilaterally. These moves have alienated former supporters and reinforced the perception of a leader losing her grip on power. Her latest actions, such as appointing key figures without board approval, have only deepened the perception of her desperate attempts to retain authority. At a recent public meeting, instead of addressing concerns about her controversial decisions, Henyard dramatically blamed the controversy on a smear campaign aimed at destroying her reputation. She portrayed herself as the victim of an elaborate propaganda operation, but this rhetoric only further alienated the residents of Dalton, who were growing weary of her tactics. In a striking moment, a bold audience member stood up and directly challenged Henyard's leadership, telling her that if she was unwilling to listen to the concerns of the people, the door was open for her to leave. This remark, which directly confronted her leadership, was met with tension in the room, highlighting the growing frustration among Dalton residents. Henyard, however, remained unfazed, brushing off the criticism with defiance. Her rapid rise to power had once positioned her as a dominant political figure, but the cracks in her leadership were now becoming more apparent with each passing controversy. The combination of Freeman's persistence, potential federal involvement, legal battles from former employees, and resistance from the Board of Trustees paints a picture of a mayor whose authority is slipping away. Henyard's efforts to maintain control through aggressive tactics and defiant rhetoric have failed to quell the mounting opposition. The unfolding drama suggests that her administration is not only battling internal dissent, but is also facing external pressures that could determine the future of her political career. Whether Freeman indeed holds the evidence to bring down Henyard's administration remains to be seen, but his continued resistance has already dealt significant blows to her image. As the power struggle intensifies, it's clear that Dalton's leadership crisis is far from over. With growing discontent among both residents and officials, Henyard's ability to maintain control appears to be nearing its breaking point. Mayor Tiffany Henyard has responded to the growing criticism of her leadership with defiant rhetoric, asserting that her actions have been misinterpreted and dismissing the backlash as part of a larger conspiracy aimed at undermining her position. She boldly stated, "Because I'm so unique and different, everyone has problems with me. But I'm doing what's best for the town." While these words were intended to project confidence, they have instead revealed a growing disconnect between Henyard and the very residents she claims to serve. As her behavior becomes increasingly unpredictable, the tension between her administration, the Board of Trustees, and Freeman has only deepened, escalating a series of controversies that continue to place her leadership under intense scrutiny. One of the most alarming allegations against Henyard is the suspected misappropriation of public funds, a legal scandal that has drawn significant attention. In just 5 months, she has been accused of egregious financial misconduct, reportedly spending a staggering $67,000 on travel expenses for herself and her entourage. When additional fees allegedly charged to taxpayers are factored in, the total sum balloons to over $100,000, raising serious questions about her ethics and decision-making. The excessive spending has drawn widespread criticism, with many questioning whether these lavish expenditures are acts of financial recklessness or a deliberate misuse of public resources. Some speculate that Henyard's extravagant spending could be a strategic attempt to secure political favors or solidify her influence. Particularly as legal troubles continue to mount in response to the growing pressure, Henyard recently hired a high-profile criminal lawyer to represent the town. This move has been widely perceived as an effort to shield herself from potential legal consequences rather than serving the best interests of the community. Reports indicate that the village will bear the cost of the lawyer's legal fees, further fueling outrage among residents and officials who view this as yet another example of Henyard using public resources for personal protection. Rather than addressing the serious accusations directly, Henyard has attempted to shift the focus away from her actions, dismissing the allegations as baseless attacks orchestrated by her political opponents. Her strategy of diversion, combined with her dismissive attitude toward criticism, has only exacerbated the growing dissatisfaction within Dalton as investigations into Henyard's administration continue, and as Freeman's persistence and potential federal cooperation add further layers to the unfolding drama. Henyard finds herself increasingly isolated. The controversies surrounding her leadership paint a picture of a mayor desperately trying to maintain control in the face of mounting legal and political challenges. Despite her repeated assertions that she is being unfairly targeted, the financial irregularities, coupled with her contentious governance style, suggest that her administration is embroiled in deeper issues than she is willing to admit. The widening rift between Henyard and the Board of Trustees, along with growing public discontent, raises significant doubts about the sustainability of her leadership. With every new revelation, the pressure intensifies. While Henyard continues to dismiss the accusations as political attacks, the legal and ethical concerns surrounding her tenure are becoming impossible to ignore. Whether she can weather the storm and retain her grip on power remains uncertain, but the cracks in her administration are becoming more apparent. Signaling a potential turning point in Dalton's political landscape, Henyard has continued to assert that her actions have been misinterpreted, insisting that her leadership has improved Dalton. She claimed, "We cleaned up the village when we took over." Yet these statements have only fueled further suspicion that she is attempting to negotiate her way out of the growing scandal surrounding her administration. While Henyard credits Dalton's supposed progress to her leadership, residents remain skeptical as they continue to grapple with ongoing legal battles, questionable spending, and widespread dissatisfaction with the local government. The controversies surrounding Henyard have escalated at an alarming rate. Multiple lawsuits have been filed by former employees, and increasing allegations of unethical governance have surfaced. Her administration has been accused of favoring local businesses, retaliating against employees, and engaging in misconduct that has raised serious ethical and legal concerns. One striking example includes a local barber shop owner who claimed his business license was suddenly revoked without explanation, reinforcing the perception that Henyard's leadership is driven by personal vendettas and power plays. Rather than fair governance, the impact of Henyard's autocratic leadership style extends beyond job losses. As accusations continue to mount that she has deliberately targeted individuals who pose a political threat to her control over Dalton and Thornton Township. In one particularly troubling case, a former maintenance manager named Dwayne Thrash disclosed that members of Henyard's inner circle pressured him to participate in a scheme to replace the school board's attorney with one of their own allies. When Thrash refused to comply, he was promptly fired. This move has been widely seen as indicative of Henyard's broader pattern of political retaliation. As opposition to her leadership continues to grow, the fractures within her own support base are becoming increasingly visible. In a dramatic turn of events, Henyard suffered a major setback when one of her former allies, Carmen Cho, a trustee on the Thornton Township Board, publicly denounced her. Cho, once considered a supporter, accused Henyard of acting unethically and in a predatory manner to consolidate power. Cho stated, "I think she has been predatory and unethical over the past 2 years." These remarks reflect a rising wave of dissatisfaction, even among those who were once aligned with Henyard, as Cho accused the mayor of using residents, merchants, and staff to expand her influence while presenting a facade of success funded by taxpayers. Cho's public denouncement has only added to the storm of controversy surrounding Henyard, whose administration was already facing criticism for alleged fraud, malfeasance, and misappropriation of public funds. Henyard's leadership, once touted by her supporters as strong and decisive, now appears to be unraveling under the weight of these legal and political battles. Acknowledging that she had remained silent for too long, Cho stated that she could no longer stand by as Henyard's actions continued to harm the community. "I'm speaking up for myself and those impacted by Henyard's leadership," Cho declared. "I believe there are many more victims who have been retaliated against but haven't spoken out, yet the accusations of corruption, financial misconduct, and governance failures have led both supporters and critics to closely watch as the drama surrounding Henyard's administration continues to unfold. Many now believe that her downfall is imminent, with some even comparing the situation to a train wreck, predicting that criminal charges may soon be filed against her as investigations by federal authorities intensify and lawsuits against her accumulate. Questions are mounting about how much longer she can maintain her grip on power. Henyard's defiance in the face of these mounting challenges has only deepened the crisis. Her once unshakable position as mayor now appears to be hanging by a thread. With legal and political pressures closing in from all sides, it seems increasingly likely that Henyard's time in office is rapidly nearing its end. While it remains uncertain whether she can withstand the storm, it is clear that her tenure as mayor is on borrowed time. As the walls close in around her, the inevitable appears to be just a matter of time, marking what could be the dramatic and controversial conclusion to her administration.